Some mistakes fade with time, but these were still living with the damage. From leaders who made one wrong move to scientists who didn't think twice, these errors turned into global disasters. In today's video, we're diving into the biggest human mistakes in history, moments so massive they changed the world forever. And the scariest part? Most of them were never meant to happen at all. The mistake that brought down the wall. It started with a press conference no one thought would change history. For nearly 30 years, the Berlin Wall had stood tall, dividing families, friends, and an entire country. Built to stop people in East Germany from escaping to the West, it became the most powerful symbol of the Cold War. But all that changed in just one evening, and not because of a big political decision or a protest, but because of one confused man reading from the wrong paper. On November 9, 1989, Gunter Schabowski, a government spokesman, was given new travel rules. But he didn't read them properly, so when reporters asked when the rules would begin, he casually said, "As far as I know, right away." That single line made people rush to the wall in huge numbers. The border guards were shocked, unprepared, and had no orders, so they opened the gates. That one mistake opened the door to freedom and marked the beginning of the end of communism in Europe. Hitler's biggest mistake. He thought he could crush the Soviet Union fast, but instead it crushed him. In 1941, Adolf Hitler broke his peace deal with Stalin and sent millions of German soldiers into the Soviet Union. He called it Operation Barbarossa. It was the largest invasion in history. Hitler believed he would win quickly, but he was terribly wrong. As Soviet troops pulled back, they destroyed their own roads, buildings, and supplies, leaving nothing for the Germans to use. The deeper the Germans went, the more trouble they faced. Then came the Russian winter, and it was brutal. German soldiers had no proper clothing or supplies. They froze, starved, and struggled to survive. More than 500,000 German troops died, and the invasion failed badly. This disaster broke the strength of Hitler's army and helped push the Soviet Union to join forces with the Western Allies. From this point on, the war turned against Hitler, and historians say this mistake may have led to his fall from power. Wrong turn to World War. It started with a mistake that changed the world forever. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary had just escaped a bombing attempt during his visit to a city called Sarajevo. But the danger wasn't over. Later that day, while heading back through the city, something unexpected happened. His drivers, confused by instructions given in a different language, took a wrong turn down a quiet side street. What happened next turned history upside down. As the car stopped to reverse, they ended up right in front of one of the assassins, Gavrilo Princip. It was pure chance, but Princip took it. He pulled out his gun and shot both the Archduke and his wife, Sophie. That one deadly moment triggered a chain reaction across Europe, pulling nations into World War I. A simple driving error became the spark that lit the fire of a 4-year global disaster. Harsh peace that sparked another war. After World War I ended, countries like Britain and France were heartbroken. They had lost millions of lives and wanted to make sure Germany never became powerful again. In 1919, they made Germany sign the Treaty of Versailles. But this peace treaty was more like a punishment. Even though other countries were also involved in starting the war, Germany got most of the blame. They had to pay huge amounts of money and lost large parts of their land. Their people were angry, poor, and humiliated. This anger didn't just disappear. It became the perfect fuel for dangerous leaders to take control. Adolf Hitler used that bitterness to rise to power, and just years later, the world was thrown into another terrible war. Some experts believe that if the Allies had treated Germany more fairly, like how they helped Japan after World War II, maybe World War II could have been avoided. This story is a powerful reminder. If peace is built on revenge, it can turn into war all over again. Napoleon's frozen disaster. He thought he could crush Russia in one swift blow, but nature had other plans. In 1812, Napoleon Bonaparte led a massive army of 500,000 soldiers into Russia. He was angry that Russia wasn't following his plan to isolate Britain. His army wasn't just French, it included troops from Austria, Italy, Germany, and Poland. At first, it looked easy. Russian forces were messy and didn't fight directly. But then the Russians started burning everything, villages, food, and crops, so Napoleon's army found nothing to eat or use as they marched forward. Then came the Battle of Borodino. Napoleon changed his usual smart tactics and went for a full-on attack. He did win and captured Moscow, but it was a hollow victory. The city was empty and cold, and Russia refused to surrender. When winter hit, things got deadly. With freezing temperatures, no food, and tired soldiers, his grand army began to fall apart. Thousands died on the way back. What started as a plan to dominate ended in disaster, marking the fall of Napoleon's power. His biggest mistake? Underestimating Russia's deadly winter and brutal strategy. Wrong math, big discovery. He was sure he was right, but his math was way off. Christopher Columbus thought the Earth was much smaller than it actually is. Using a mix of old guesses and his own wrong ideas, he believed Asia was just a short sail to the west from Europe. What he didn't know was that a huge continent stood in the way. This major mistake didn't stop him, though. He pushed forward, trying to convince someone to fund his bold idea. Spain was desperate for spices and wanted a faster trade route. That's why they gave Columbus the ships he needed. He set out with confidence, but not because he had the right answers. His entire journey was based on a wrong calculation. And yet, this mistake ended up changing world history forever. It's proof that sometimes even the biggest errors can lead to something huge. Costly mistake in Vietnam. It all started with one big decision that changed everything. President Kennedy thought he was stopping communism by sending help to South Vietnam. At first, it was just 400 special military advisors. But after a strange event called the Gulf of Tonkin incident, where U.S. ships were said to be attacked, things took a wild turn. The government said it was an unprovoked attack, but later, people started questioning if it even happened the way they claimed. By the way, the people questioning if it even happened the way they claimed, that one moment led to a full-blown war. More and more U.S. troops were sent in, turning a small mission into a long and bloody disaster. The second so-called attack, which pushed the war further, was later exposed as fake. The war dragged on for years, and American troops even committed horrible acts like the My Lai massacre. In the end, the U.S. lost the war because of wrong decisions, false reports, and a strategy that only made things worse. Upon war, maybe if Kennedy had stuck to just special forces like the Green Berets, things wouldn't have gone so bad. Messing with Genghis Khan. He ruled with the heart of a wolf and the fire of revenge. Genghis Khan wasn't just a conqueror, he was a storm. When the Khwarazmian Empire killed his envoys, they didn't just insult a ruler, they lit a fuse. Genghis had sent diplomats to build peace, but the Khwarazmian rulers didn't just reject them, they beheaded the chief ambassador. That act sealed their fate. For Genghis Khan, loyalty was everything, and betrayal meant war. Within just 2 years, he brought the mighty Khwarazmian Empire to its knees. He crushed their cities, wiped out their armies, and left nothing behind but ashes. Historians say between 2 and 15 million people may have died. Genghis Khan respected all faiths, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Judaism, but when his trust was broken, nothing could stop his wrath. That's what happens when you anger the most dangerous man the world has ever known. But there's room for one thing to be true. What the poet himself, what he said and believed, how time confused a war. Everything was going according to plan, until the clocks got in the way. In 1961, during the Cold War, the U.S. was secretly helping Cuban exiles to attack Cuba and remove Fidel Castro. The plan was to land quietly on the island and surprise everyone, but one small detail ruined it all. A bomber plane, painted badly to look like a Cuban aircraft, exposed the truth. The world quickly realized that the U.S. was behind the attack. Embarrassed and under pressure, President Kennedy canceled the promised air support that could have changed everything. But the worst mistake was yet to come, and it was all about time. When U.S. bombers flew from Nicaragua to help the invasion, they arrived too late. Why? Because someone forgot that Nicaragua is 1 hour behind Cuba. That small time difference gave Cuban forces a head start. They were already waiting and ready. The invaders had no chance. The whole operation failed badly, and it became one of America's biggest embarrassments during the Cold War. The mold that changed the world. Something strange happened in a quiet lab in 1928. A Scottish doctor named Alexander Fleming was studying dangerous bacteria, but he made a simple mistake. He left his petri dishes out over the weekend. When he came back, one of the dishes had grown mold. But here's the shocking part. All the bacteria around that mold had died. Fleming looked closer and realized he had just stumbled upon something incredible. That mold turned out to be penicillin, the first real antibiotic the world had ever seen. Fleming's small accident ended up saving millions of lives. His discovery gave doctors a way to fight deadly infections that used to kill people easily. If Fleming hadn't forgotten those dishes, modern medicine might still be struggling to fight basic bacterial diseases. Sometimes, the biggest breakthroughs come from the smallest mistake. Chernobyl's deadly mistake. It all started with a test that was supposed to make things safer, but instead it turned into the world's worst nuclear disaster. At the Chernobyl power plant near Kiev in the Soviet Union, a safety test was scheduled for the daytime when experienced workers were on duty, but for some reason, it was handed over to a night shift crew with little training and almost no preparation. One mistake led to another, and before anyone could stop it, the reactor exploded. A huge cloud of deadly radiation spread across nearby countries like Finland and Sweden, poisoning the air in every direction. The worst part? The Soviet government stayed quiet. They knew something terrible had happened, but didn't tell the truth. Important safety details were hidden from the plant workers, and the evacuation of the nearby town, Pripyat, was delayed for more than 24 hours. Thousands of people were left exposed to radiation while the world watched in confusion. By the time Soviet leaders finally spoke about it, the damage was already done. What should have been a simple test became a disaster caused by human error, bad planning, and dangerous secrecy. Rommel missed D-Day. Everything could have changed on June 6, 1944. This was the day the Allies stormed the beaches of Normandy, a moment now known as D-Day. It was one of the largest military invasions in history. But while soldiers risked their lives on the front lines, Germany's top general, Erwin Rommel, wasn't even there. He had taken leave to celebrate his wife's birthday, and that's not all. German weather experts wrongly predicted terrible storms, thinking no invasion would happen for weeks. So when the Allies showed up, German defenses were caught off guard, poorly coordinated, and weaker without Rommel's sharp leadership. Rommel was known for fast counterattacks and smart strategies. If he had been present that day, things might have gone very differently. The Germans might have responded faster and hit back harder. But Hitler's strict control delayed key orders, especially the use of powerful panzer tanks. On top of that, the Allies tricked the Germans with a fake invasion plan called Operation Fortitude, making them spread out their forces even more. These mistakes, Rommel's absence, bad weather forecasts, Hitler's delays, and the success of Allied deception gave the Allies the upper hand and helped turn the tide of World War II. The bloody battle for Texas. The fight for Texas exploded into chaos in 1836. Mexican forces led by General Santa Anna surrounded the Alamo, a small mission where about 200 Texan fighters held their ground. For 13 days, the battle raged with smoke, gunfire, and desperate defense. Then came the final attack. 1,500 Mexican soldiers stormed in, wave after wave. The defenders, including brave legends like Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie, fought till the end. Though Mexico won the Alamo, they lost hundreds of men, and something bigger, they sparked a wildfire of anger across Texas. The brutal loss of the Alamo lit a fire in the hearts of Texians. Driven by revenge, they gathered quickly and struck back hard. Just weeks later, their new army surprised Santa Anna at the Battle of San Jacinto. In just 18 minutes, they crushed the Mexican troops and captured Santa Anna himself. That quick victory forced Mexico to accept Texas as an independent republic. Remember, the Alamo became more than just words, it became a cry for freedom. The battle didn't just shape Texas, it helped shape American history forever. Deadly gift inside a wooden horse. A long time ago, during the Trojan War, around 1200 BC, the Greek army came up with a sneaky plan. They built a giant wooden horse and hid their best soldiers inside it. Then they pretended to leave, acting like the war was over. They left the horse outside Troy's gates as a gift to the god Poseidon. Some people in Troy thought it was a trap and wanted to burn it. But others said, "It's a sacred gift, we must bring it in." That night, while everyone was asleep, the hidden Greek soldiers quietly climbed out, opened the city gates, and let the army in. Troy was attacked and completely destroyed. This wasn't just a trick, it changed history. The Greeks didn't just fight with weapons, they fought with clever ideas. Their fake retreat made the Trojans feel safe, and that's when they struck. The fall of Troy ended a war that lasted 10 years, with heroes like Achilles and Hector. Today, archaeologists believe they found the real city of Troy in a place called Hisarlik. With layers of cities built over ruins from that time, The story of the Trojan horse teaches us one big lesson. Even the strongest walls can fall, not by force, but by deception. Caesar's last warning. He was the most powerful man in Rome, but even he couldn't escape his fate. Julius Caesar had built an empire, conquered lands, and even gave his name to the month of July, but behind his fame and glory were signs of danger he refused to see. Senators whispered about plots to kill him. A fortune teller warned him about March 15th. His wife, Calpurnia, had a terrifying dream of his death and begged him not to leave home. But Caesar, proud and confident, laughed off every warning, even ignoring his close friend Brutus, who tried to stop him from going to the Senate. That day, March 15th in 44 BC, became one of the most shocking days in history. Inside the Senate, Caesar was attacked by men he once trusted. He was stabbed 23 times, and with his final breath, he saw Brutus among them. His murder didn't save the Republic like the killers hoped. Instead, it threw Rome into chaos and war. In the end, Caesar's adopted son Octavian rose to power as the first emperor, ending the Roman Republic forever. The words "et tu, Brute" still remind us of deep betrayal, and Caesar's fall became a symbol of how pride and ignored warnings can bring down even the greatest. Mao's deadly dream of progress. He wanted to change everything overnight. Mao Zedong, the founder of modern China, launched a bold plan in the late 1950s called the Great Leap Forward. He wanted China to become a strong industrial nation like the West. So he told people to build backyard furnaces and push steel and coal production at full speed. New farms, new factories, everything had to grow fast. But this dream was not planned well. It failed terribly. Crops failed, the economy crashed, and millions of people died from hunger. By 1962, even his supporters started blaming him. For a short time, he stepped back from power after the 7,000 cadres conference. But he didn't stay quiet for long. Mao came back with another storm, the Cultural Revolution. He wanted to erase old ideas and traditions from China's society. His earlier campaign had already changed farming by replacing personal farms with group farming, but fake grain reports and government food collection made the famine even worse. Some say 15 million died, others believe it was 45 million. It was one of the deadliest disasters in human history. Even today, coal plants built in those days still stand, silently telling the story of a dream that turned into a nightmare. Mao's actions may have shaped China's future, but the human cost was unforgettable. NASA ignored the warnings. It was a freezing morning in January 1986 when the Space Shuttle Challenger prepared for liftoff. The world watched with excitement as it carried the first ever civilian astronaut, teacher Krista McAuliffe. But just 73 seconds after launch, everything turned into a nightmare. The shuttle exploded in the sky, killing all 7 people on board. What caused it? Tiny rubber seals, called O-rings, didn't work properly in the cold. Engineers like Roger Bojoli had warned NASA days before, even sending a clear memo saying the O-rings might fail. But NASA's higher-ups ignored those warnings and pushed forward. After the explosion, a big investigation revealed the truth. The Rogers Commission found that NASA had serious communication problems and was under pressure to stick to launch schedules. Safety took a back seat, and that cost lives. The disaster shook the world and forced NASA to change how it handled risk, redesign shuttle parts, and take safety much more seriously. The Challenger tragedy became a painful lesson, a reminder that ignoring expert advice for the sake of speed can lead to deadly mistakes. Disneyland mistake that got him killed. He just wanted to visit Disneyland, but that simple dream cost him his life. Kim Jong-nam, the oldest son of North Korea's ruler Kim Jong-il, was once meant to be the next leader, but in 2001 he made a huge mistake. Using a fake passport and a fake name, he tried to sneak into Tokyo Disneyland. He was caught by Japanese police and sent back to China. This embarrassed his father so badly that Kim Jong-nam was removed from the family circle. His younger half-brother Kim Jong-un took his place as the future leader. That one Disney trip changed everything. Years later, while living in exile, Kim Jong-nam spoke out against his family's rule. In 2017, the world was stunned when he was murdered in Malaysia. 2 women smeared a deadly nerve agent on his face at the airport. Reports later revealed he had been talking to the CIA and wanted North Korea to open up to the world. But to the regime, that made him a threat. His death wasn't just a family betrayal, it showed how dangerous it is to challenge power in a country ruled by fear. Deadly mistake that destroyed an empire? A Hungarian engineer named Orban knocked on the door of the Byzantine Empire with a powerful idea. He offered to build giant cannons that could protect Constantinople from the rising threat of the Ottomans. But the Byzantines were low on money and rejected his help. Feeling insulted, Orban turned to the enemy. The Ottomans welcomed him and let him build the biggest cannon of its time, the basilic. It was so huge, it needed 90 oxen and 400 men just to move it. In 1453, the Ottomans fired Orban's massive cannonballs at the city's famous walls, which had stood strong for almost 800 years. They crushed those walls and dragged their ships overland to surprise the defenders. The Byzantines had unknowingly helped seal their own doom. That one rejection changed history forever. Constantinople fell, the Byzantine Empire vanished, and the Ottomans took control of trade between Europe and Asia. This forced European explorers to search for new sea routes, which kicked off the age of exploration. Orban's cannons didn't just destroy a city, they rewrote the future of warfare. Ancient stone walls were now useless against gunpowder weapons. The Byzantines had been weakened for years by money problems and messy politics, but saying no to Orban was the final blow. It wasn't just a mistake, it was the end of an era. Titanic's deadly mistakes. The night Titanic sank was full of terrible decisions, but one mistake made things even worse. When the crew saw the iceberg, they didn't slow down. Instead, they turned sharply to avoid it. But that turn ripped a huge gash along the side of the ship, flooding 5 compartments. If they had hit the iceberg straight on, the damage might have been less and the ship could have stayed afloat. But that wasn't the only failure. The ship only had 20 lifeboats, enough for half the passengers. People trusted Titanic too much, calling it unsinkable, and that led to deadly overconfidence. What's even more heartbreaking is that they were warned. Nearby ships sent several messages about icebergs, but not all of them were passed on to the captain. The crew was under pressure to reach New York on time, so they kept going fast through icy waters. The lookouts didn't even have binoculars, which made it harder to see danger in the dark. And the metal used to build Titanic turned brittle in the cold, making the damage even worse. After this tragedy, the world changed how ships operate. More lifeboats, better safety laws, and constant iceberg patrols. But for the Titanic, the lessons came too late. History doesn't forgive mistakes this big. If you found these stories shocking, hit that like button, subscribe for more mind-blowing history, and let us know in the comments which mistake shocked you the most.